Hello, welcome to the Inspiring Growth podcast. My name is Lauren, if you haven't met me before. Today's podcast is actually really exciting. I'm going to be interviewing James Fish Gill. Now, James is fish. Let's call him Fish. Fish is a heart coach, a yoga teacher, and a transformational facilitator based in Perth, WA. He supports individuals and couples to grow mutual understanding and emotional intimacy in any moment of upset, rupture, or conflict in all relationships that matter most. Fish has supported individuals, including myself. I've just completed his heart coach facilitation training, which is a 6-month program to become a facilitator of his work. His warm, compassionate style draws on his experiences as a facilitator, educator, yoga teacher, actor, and father of 2 young adults. Today's interview went a little bit longer than anticipated, but we do go deep into the kind of wrong, right thinking, the ways that our community is programmed to respond in conflict, a discernment and creating boundaries around conflict and having this conscious heartfelt approach, as well as many more deep ways of creating a deeper sense of connection, as well as raising your awareness and emotional maturity. I'm so excited for you to see this interview. Now, before we do get into it, I do just want to mention that Inspiring Growth Coaching has a 8-month emotional healing community coming up. So that'll be launching on the 17th of September. So it is women's only, and it's been consciously designed as a space for women to come together and to heal so many of the wounds of our collective, but also to act as mirrors for each other. You know, as Fish and I go into in this podcast, healing happens when our pain is met with loving awareness. It also happens in connection. So we can't heal on our own. And that's why a group collective like the Soul Collective is a great place if you are a woman on this journey and looking to grow, even heal. A lot of the people who have already joined are looking to heal their wound around other feminine beings and in connection. We do have some free workshops coming up to just get a taster of what myself, the facilitator, is like. So please, I'll drop the link in the notes of this podcast, and I hope to see you there. But otherwise, enjoy. Okay, so let's get into it. Fish, welcome to the Inspiring Growth podcast.
Thank you, Lauren. It's be here
Oh,
with you.
yes, absolutely. I would just love for you to give a really quick summary. We've just been having a quick chat and we've got so many things that we want to dive into. So just a quick summary of what heart open communication is.
Well, I give people skills to create attunement between ourselves and all other beings in moments where attunement goes missing. And so a little bit more to dive into the word attunement in case it doesn't make sense to anyone. Really, we experience attunement when someone is fiercely present and open towards the experience that we're having. So you might think of, when you were a child and you fell over and grazed your knee. Maybe some people teased you for being clumsy when you tripped, and other people were like, oh my God, I don't have time to deal with that now. But then there was maybe one person who actually came to you and wrapped an arm around you and said, ouch. Like, is that stinging? I'm right here for you in the very real experience you're having. Some of us had, benevolent grandparents who were just that loving presence. Some of us had that in our parents. Some of us really didn't. Some of us had it in our siblings or our best friends. The person that you can turn to who just gets exactly what's happening for you right now without having to change it or judge it or fix it or dismiss it or minimize it or even rationalize it. So those moments of deep attunement are what sustains any kind of relationship. And if we get into relationships where attunement is too often missing, we're not in a space of feeling loved and feeling loving.
Mm.
So attunement is quite easy to do when we're in peacetime with each
Yes.
other. When you're lying with your lover poolside on banana lounges sipping
On
cocktails and
holiday.
on holidays, and you're just like, baby, I just feel into you. Yes, yes, yum. But as soon as the shit hits the fan, as soon as some misunderstanding or hurt or upset or disappointment arises between us, attunement goes immediately out the door, and we're left kind of arguing for our side to be recognized. So, yeah, that's the skills development program that I run.
Yes, it's so true. And I just kind of want to talk a little bit about what attracted me to work with you. So I've just completed the heart coach facilitation training with you the last 6 months.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing this work for quite a while, and I've also been a coach for just over 2 years now. And I've been working in shadow work, inner child work, which is all about understanding where things come from and healing from that perspective. And what I kind of found was that I knew everything, but the relationships in my life, when someone wasn't able, because I know exactly how someone should meet me, and I was able to meet people like that. But when they didn't meet me the way that I needed them to, I was like, why? Like, why aren't you doing this? Don't you love me? And so for me, it was just this huge impact of how come I can meet everyone else, but they can't meet me? And so I would absolutely love. So, anyway, that's what brought me to you. Just a really quick story because I'm sharing a lot about manifestation and things like that. About 18 months ago, I was dating a guy, and we come across a podcast of yours, and he was really intellectual and really smart. And, you're talking about how there's more than one truth to each conflict and looking in the other person's perspective. And so I made a declaration, I'm going to interview this guy on my podcast. Now, I didn't even have a podcast then. And then two
Bless.
weeks later, yeah. And then 2 weeks later, you announced that you were having a workshop in Sydney in like 6 months' time. And I was like, I'm going. I don't care how much it takes. I'm going. And then I went to the workshop 6 months later, wasn't seeing this guy. And then you were like, I'm doing the heart coach facilitation. And I was like, done. And I just knew that, this was what was next for me. I just needed that compassionate approach. And I already took that with everyone else, but I wasn't feeling it in return. And so I would absolutely just love for you to expand on the impact of the good and bad, right and wrong sort of thing.
Great. So first of all, I just want to acknowledge that, back when you made that declaration, what you were really possibly acting on was the fact that my message, the little junk food nuggets of Instagram reels that I put out into the world and the slightly longer podcasts that are still kind of only scratching the surface. What I put out into the world is not anything new. It's nothing that your heart doesn't already know. And people tend to be drawn to this approach because they're like, oh God, I didn't know what I needed until I heard it. And then it just makes so much sense to me. Like it's
Yes.
just like the compassionate approach, compassion to self and
Mm,
compassion to others in equal measure just feels right in my heart. So I just want to acknowledge the intuitive connection that you have to this work really just speaks to the essence of your compassion, that you're still connected to the essential compassion that is your true nature. Now, we live in a world where compassion towards ourselves and towards all other beings is almost these days seen as naive or outrageously
yes.
um,
Yes.
heretical. Like, how dare
Yes.
fish you suggest that we might have compassion for all beings? Is your head in the sand? Have you not looked out into the world and seen what people are capable of and the horrors and the pain and
The
the abuse and
injustice.
the rape and the pillaging and the murder and the injustice? How on earth how
Mm,
on earth can you even dare to suggest that those human beings might be worthy of my compassion? What a very valid place to stand. Because look at the atrocities on the planet. I mean, and they're escalating. It's just that if we stand in that place of suggesting that some people are worthy of my compassion, here's my list over here of people worthy. And then my list over here of people who are unworthy of my compassion. What I'm actually doing, I'm unaware that I'm doing it, but what I'm actually doing is I'm casting some people in and others out. And that is the very fracture that all wars and atrocities are built on. So, for as long as I cast anyone out of the realm of my compassion, and I've got every right to do so, I'm not arguing the fact that people naturally want to do that. But as I cast someone out, I declare war on them secretly, silently.
mm-hmm.
I'll bring love to this community and I won't bring love to that community. That's
Yes.
the very rupture that escalates that we are so outraged about. Now, there's a very strongly mistaken belief that to be compassionate towards someone equals to condone or be okay with what they've done. And that is an unconscious belief woven into the psyche of humanity that
Yes.
is a very detrimental and dangerous assumption. In this work, as you know, because you've been practicing it, I can hold a human being in the center of my compassionate heart while removing myself entirely from their behavior and standing fiercely against the pain they're causing. I can do those two things at once. Until we realize that we can have compassion for a being whose behavior we take a stand against, until we recognize we can do those two things, we will simply condemn them and cast them out, and they will never be wrapped in loving awareness, and that will amplify their behavior.
Yeah, and I just wanted to, I guess, touch on the consequences of that in that disconnection. You know, we live in a world, and the one thing that I appreciated so much was that you never made our behavior or reaction wrong. As in, when I got upset and was like, fuck you, hang up, or whatever, your response was, of course, you're going to respond like that. Of course,
Yeah.
you're going to react like that, you
Yeah.
know? And in you seeing the goodness in my, as you say, unskillful reaction, I was like, yeah. Because I want my pain to be seen. I want to be safe. I also want to protect this relationship. I don't want it to escalate any further. And I would love for you to just talk about the impact of that disconnection. And also maybe some of the reasons why people or what they're wanting by labeling good and bad or bad.
Yeah.
And labeling things like narcissistic and what's the other ones? I don't know, there's so many.
Some of the other terms are gaslighting,
Yes.
toxic,
Yes.
people, toxic behavior,
Mm,
green and red flags. So all of those. So yeah, let's dive into the realm of labeling and pathologizing.
yes.
But just to start with, you know, it's very natural for the human mind to perceive behavior as good or bad. And most conversations about behavior in the world will naturally accept that there's such a thing as good behavior and bad behavior.
Because it's how we've been trained, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You do this, you're good, you'll get rewarded.
That's right. So, what we really mean when we call behavior bad, what we're really saying is that behavior created upset,
Yes.
pain, disappointment, fear, uncertainty, whatever kind of upset. And when we label behavior as good, what we really mean is that behavior created some positive impact. It evoked some positive feelings. So when I label my child's behavior as good, it's because as a parent, I feel proud, I feel relieved, I feel joyful, I feel respected. When my child's behavior is, I label it bad, it's really me saying I felt embarrassed, I felt
Mm,
hurt, I felt unappreciated, I felt scared, I felt worried. So we have this habit of making an external projection with a label on the behavior. But what's really more true than that is that that certain behavior brought up certain feelings in me.
yes.
So if I think someone is behaving badly, what I'm really saying is their behavior is bringing up difficult feelings in me. The feelings are real. I'm not trying to dismiss them. The feelings are real and definitely need to be recognized and communicated. Because to be in healthy relationship, someone else's behavior, it's going to go better if their behavior evokes a good feeling in me, feeling safe, mutual, recognized, loved, considered. And when they behave in a way that evokes fear, doubt, uncertainty, unappreciation in me, I need to address it, right? So we have a very natural tendency to label behavior as good or bad, or even label people as good or bad.
Yes.
And
Labeling
what
their
we
behavior as them. Yeah.
we have this notion that the behavior and the character of the person are somehow one and the same. But you know yourself, you've said and done things that you regret, haven't you?
Totally.
Like I've hurt people that I really loved. Does that mean I'm a bad person? Well, I could collapse into that world, but actually, when I've hurt people, it's because the actions I took in trying to fulfill my very real needs were just unskillful. And what I mean by that, as you know, the unskillful action is just the action I take that it doesn't match the impact I had with what I'd hoped for.
Yes.
So a very unskillful action I took once was to cheat on a partner. Was I aiming to create immense, unfathomable heartbreak for her? No, that wasn't
Ooh.
part of my plan. Was I longing to feel the kind of vibrancy of new connection with someone? Yes. Was I wanting to feel understood about aspects of me that my partner didn't seem to understand? Yes. I wanted that sense of connection, vitality, the kind of energy of like desire, the newness. And the action I took to fulfill on those intentions was incredibly unskillful, because I left my partner feeling absolutely destroyed, completely deceived, utterly heartbroken, and quite possibly years down the track still dealing with the impact of that. Would I label that as bad behavior? I don't think that's very skillful to label it that. I would label it as me going about trying to feel certain things in a way that created enormous pain for my partner. So this work really is founded on the understanding that our behavior, good or bad, arises from an experience we're having. Always. There's nothing we do that isn't motivated by the experience we're having. And there's a longing in us wanting to be expressed, and there's an upset in us wanting to be expressed. And those two things contribute to what we know as behavior. So we can label behavior as good or bad and judge people as good or bad because of their behavior, but it doesn't get us anywhere, because we're missing the point, which is there's an experience happening that's trying to be expressed. And if we're looking to change behavior in relationships, which we naturally will, because we don't want someone yelling at us, we don't want someone excluding us, we don't want someone, dismissing our feelings. So if we want to address behavior, we need to get very curious about where the behavior is arising from and tend to the experience. Just as a very simple analogy, if my child is having a tantrum in the supermarket, I won't shift their behavior by shaming them into like, how dare you get so angry with me? Shut your mouth, young man. That won't shift their behavior. It might kind of suppress something, but it won't alter their behavior, not in the long run. What will alter the behavior is if I can sit with them and say, I can see how incredibly upset you are right now. And then the anger will probably become tears. And then the tears might become regret or fear or doubt. And something starts to shift. So this is what we mean by attunement. Getting connected to the experience that is lying underneath the shitty behavior. Not condoning the behavior, shifting the behavior by tending lovingly to the experience.
Yes. Oh my God, so much. And what's coming up for me now, we were talking before this, and we're just very much on the same page in terms of what it is that we want to talk about in this podcast. But what's coming up for me now is how, when you're dealing with someone who, regardless of how we show up, regardless of how we validate their experience or pain, their response and reaction is still unskillful. And I remember this happened to me in a couple of relationships that I was practicing it, where I opened up the space to have that open communication, and I acknowledged what I wanted and how they might have felt, and then I invited them to share how they felt, and they continued to share 30 years of pain and all this other stuff which I was not prepared for. And even though I continued to validate, I was just left feeling completely drained. And I just come to you and I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, this is just too much. And so I wanted, what I want you to talk about.
Yeah. So is the question, what do we do when people won't play this game with us?
Yeah, because we can show up, like, the questions about discernment and boundaries in when someone, now there's people have a different view of boundaries in, you can't talk to me like that, or, you know, and which is again shutting down that disconnection. So I guess I want you to talk about the how and why that happens when they continue to go on and on and on and on, and how to kind of handle it. Because I know, especially reading some of the comments that you get on Instagram, some of the feedback that you get, it is something common that people experience, is that the person that they're talking to opens up, but it opens up all their other wounds and all their other trauma that they've ever experienced that has nothing to do with what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. So, good place to start is recognizing that whenever we do something that unintentionally hurts someone, the pain that will be evoked in them, it's not just in the moment. It's not just about right now. It's not just about what we said or did right now. It's about their whole life, actually. A life's worth of pain is being evoked by what we said or did. And we never wanted to upset them, and they're upset. Those two things coexist. So this is an important sort of point to get, that every time someone in my life expresses how upset they are with me, their upset coexists with the fact that I never wanted their upset. Because I've simply never rolled out of bed one morning and thought, how do I really upset people that I care about? And yet, I've done a magnificent job of creating a lot of pain with the people I care about. So those two things exist. My longing to never upset people, and the fact that they are often upset. That might sound a bit difficult for the mind to grasp until we realize actually that that's everywhere. Think of the last time someone expressed their upset to you. Recognize that their upset was alive in them and you never wanted it for them. Holding each of those in one hand. So it's quite difficult for us to bring ourselves lovingly towards the pain that they're expressing. Unconsciously, we'll be trying to push it away. Someone comes to me and says, Fish, that wasn't very sensitive. You know, you weren't very sensitive on the phone to me last night. My immediate reaction is to go, excuse me, I was being really sensitive. So we tend to meet pain with a no, like consistently meet pain with a no, because it's not what I ever wanted. It's not what I think I was doing. So when you come to me and say, hey, you were being a certain way, I'm like, no, I wasn't. That's your shitty interpretation. That's your shit. Don't bring your shit to me. Like, how dare you see me in that way? I'm not a hurtful person. Your hurt is your interpretation, and that's yours. So that's kind of what's peddled out there in the world, like we're not responsible for other people's shit. But actually, their pain and the fact that I'd never wanted their pain, those two things are both true. And we can either bring loving awareness to those two things and build interdependence or relationship, or we can just dismiss one or both of those things and just create rupture. So why might we want to bring a yes? Why might we want to meet someone's pain with a yes? Can I ask you, what's it been like for you in your life? Can you think of a moment or two where you've needed to express your upset to someone and they've been able to meet you with a loving, compassionate yes?
I'm already crying. Well, the first time was in, like, with you, but then as I've been able to maintain this open-hearted space in recognizing the goodness in what the other person has said or done, that has they've over time they've opened up to me and been like this guy that I'm seeing the other week, I said, I'm just feeling really anxious and insecure. Can we catch up? I want to talk about this and that and that. And he rings me, he goes, what are you feeling anxious and insecure about? And I just was like, can we talk in person? Because I just need to, I was just crying because I haven't experienced someone being open to my pain, right? The ways in which people have responded is dismiss, invalidation, telling me that I'm wrong for feeling like that, all those sorts of things. And it was just, yeah, it just,
Yeah. So the expression that you just made with your hands is like heart opening. So here you are sitting with some degree of suffering. You communicate it, and someone says, you have every right to feel exactly what you're in. And I'm right here with you. That is deep attunement. That is meeting pain with a yes. Now, that is a very rare experience out there in the world. Some of us have, some of your listeners will be able to think of a person, you'll be able to picture the face of the person who can consistently meet you with a yes. Not trying to fix it, not trying to justify it, not trying to challenge it or dismiss it or minimize it or compare it, just simply, yes, it makes sense that that is alive for you, and I'm right here with you to witness it. That is deep attunement. Now, this work is about trying to meet someone's pain with a yes, because when we attune to someone's pain, it begins to transform. All healing, no matter what modality you can look at, all healing is simply meeting pain with a yes. Whether that's loving massage touch, whether it's Reiki, whether it's emotional, talk therapy, meeting pain with a yes. Now, it's very difficult for us to meet pain with a yes because habitually we want to meet it with a no. So coming back to your questions, like, what do I do when here I am wanting to kind of create an open dialogue with someone who's upset, but all they want to do is spout their 30 years of history of horrible events and pin it all on me? Now, we don't have to say yes to their analysis. We're not saying yes to the fact that they think we're a selfish asshole. That's analysis. We're not saying yes to the fact that they blame us for their 5 years of misery in the relationship. That's analysis. What we're trying to do is feel into what's alive for them and meet them there with a yes. So as an example, my conversation with my ex-wife last year went very pear-shaped. And she hung up on me on the phone. And I wanted to just react to her and say, hey, I was being all kind of loving and open and communicative, and you just shut me down. So screw you, it's your fault, right? The mind just wants to go back into who's right and who's wrong. But when I called her the next day, I said, I think I might have left you feeling really dismissed. So there's me, like you were, Lauren, there's me making an offer of actually trying to open the conduit so she can express her pain and I can meet her with a yes. But instead of just saying, oh, yeah, you did, she said, but you always do that. You always dismiss me. You've done that for years and nothing's changed. And how dare you? Da, da, da. And so off she goes. And I just want to fight back and just go, how fucking dare you? Here I am being all conscious in my communication and you're just throwing all this shit at me, right? But
Here I am being a good person doing the
that's
right thing.
yes. And here you are being a bad person doing the wrong thing. Exactly. See how the mind just loves that game. But actually, I was able to stay present with her and I was able to say, what's it been like for you feeling as if I don't listen to you for years? What's that been like for you that's still here for you years after we've divorced? And she started to cry and she said, I just feel so unappreciated and so unrecognized. And I said, wow, that must be heartbreaking for you. And she cried a bit more and she just said, thank you. And then later on in the conversation, she came back and said, I don't actually feel like you never listened to me. It's just that that's how it felt in the moment. So all I've been doing is try to stay really open and present to the experience she's having, which is consistently unlistened to, hurt, angry, frustrated, unappreciated. And if I can keep meeting her with a yes there, 5 minutes later in the conversation, there's this openness and this warmth. She even says to me at the end of the conversation, I love how I can count on you to be interested in how I'm feeling. And I said to her, I'm committed to that for the rest of our lives. We're co-parents together. Of course, I'm interested. So your question really represented when you had started to open communication with someone saying, hey, I can see that what I did, even though I never wanted your suffering, I can see that what I did may well have left you feeling a certain upset. You've made this beautiful invitation, and then they've charged at you with all their analysis. I think you might have heard me use the analogy of, what happens at home when we unblock a drain pipe?
Mm.
All the shit comes out.
Yeah.
Never unblock a drain pipe and shit doesn't come. Like it always comes out because that's what the blocked drain pipe, that's what's happening in the blockage. And when we invite another person to share their pain, we can expect that they will do so really unskillfully.
Especially because as a society, we're just so trained to
Not
push away the pain, fix it, it's their problem, it's not ours. Yeah.
so in that moment, Lauren, with your person, you've invited them to share their pain. And finally they feel like, okay, right. Well, you better take a seat, buddy, because I've got some pain to express, right? And they're not trained in skillfully inviting you into the feelings. They're trained in projecting their feelings as if it's your fault, right? Like the whole world is carrying on about. So they will unskillfully just let loose. And what you have agency over is how you respond. So either you get caught up in their analysis and start defending yourself, or you go underneath and ask yourself the question, what are they experiencing? And it will be something like hurt, anger, sorrow, disappointment, frustration, feeling unappreciated, feeling unrecognized, uncared for, unloved, unconsidered. Always. That's always what's at the bottom of pain. So if we can move closer to them and say yes to their pain and stay present with them and say, you have every right to feel this depth of upset. And I'm right here. We don't need to be agreeing with their analysis of us. We don't, like, I didn't need to say to my ex-wife, you're right. I am a selfish asshole who's never listened to you. You're right. Because that's simply not true about me.
Mm.
But she was projecting that in an effort to have her feeling unappreciated recognized. And the frustration and the disappointment of not feeling like the man that she used to be so deeply in love with cares about her now. Like it's really heartbreaking when you feel into it.
Yes.
Now, the
Absolutely.
longer we stay there and meet their pain with the yes, I promise you, the more likely it is to dissolve. But can I talk to you about the ways that we tend to respond to their pain instead?
Yes, please. First of all, just before you do that, I just want to share because uh, sitting with other people's pain, right? So I do emotion coaching, so I'm very good at validating my own experience. And I teach other people how to validate theirs. So I'm great at doing that. But sitting in the space where they weren't wrong, there was a part of me that felt like I was wrong. And even though I know that's not true, I had it. And it was a lot of shame that came up for me, and just sitting through that feeling of this is okay. And yeah, it was incredible to have that shift and be able to hold myself in that feeling of not needing to do anything, and neither is right or wrong, and
Yeah.
they're not bad and I'm not bad, and both are right.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. So you're pointing directly to the fact that the mind naturally, when it encounters pain, the mind immediately tries to work out where's the source of the pain and how do we move away. That's actually the mechanism of blame or fault finding. If there's upset between us, whose fault is it? That the mind is obsessed with that. Even if we think that we're the kind of person that doesn't blame, bullshit. If you've got a human mind, you're a blamer. Even if you're blaming yourself quietly or secretly blaming someone else, but trying to look like not a blamey person. The mind, and this is a valid response that the mind has because the mind is a safety mechanism. We're trying to identify the threat and move away from the threat. So, in my conversation with my ex-wife, when she hangs up on me, clearly she's upset. My mind immediately goes, whose fault is that? Is it her overreaction, or am I a bad person for upsetting her? Right? So as soon as my mind starts the game of whose fault is it, I'm screwed, because either I get to be bad and she gets to be right, or she gets to be bad and wrong and I get to be right. Either way, one of us gets dismissed. But actually, in reality, she's having an experience and so am I, and both need to be recognized. So what will prevent us, the major thing that prevents us from being open and loving towards someone's pain, from being able to meet their pain with a yes and transform it, is the fact that we're already pulling away from being the reason for it. Pain is no one's fault, actually, it turns out. The pain that my ex-wife felt in that moment was alive for her, even as what I was trying to do was clarify the support she was asking for so that I could demonstrate my care for her. So it's not my fault because I had this loving intention. It's also not her fault because it's just come alive in her because of her whole life. Certain moments in her life of feeling unrecognized and unappreciated when she was little and a little older and a bit older still, they all just come alive for her. And those moments of feeling unattuned to that contribute to her pain, they weren't even other people's fault. They were also unskillful actions. Because if we really trace back whose fault is pain, we might get to, oh, it's our parents' fault, but then it's maybe their parents' fault. Then, oh God, maybe it's that uncle's fault. And then it's that step parent's fault. And then it's the grand. And we just trace it back and that game never ends. But we do, in the mind, we have this unconscious notion that pain must be someone's fault. And that's going to be a barrier to meeting pain with a yes. So one of the critical pieces of this work is recognizing that I have to be prepared to make all pain real and valid to be willing to meet it with a yes.
And to bring us closer to connection and intimacy in
Yeah.
every moment.
Yeah. And as you know, this work gives us practice in recognizing I wanted a beautiful thing, I took an action, and it created pain for you. And those things coexist and they're everywhere. I took another action that I thought was loving towards myself and you felt unappreciated. I tried to include you and you felt excluded. I was making light of a situation because I thought it would give you a sense of buoyancy, but actually you felt ridiculed and teased by me. I was waiting to talk to you to get some clarity in what I was feeling so I could share with you more transparently. But in the meantime, you felt shut out and kept at arm's length because I hadn't spoken to you about that thing. I was wanting to evoke in you a feeling of being desired when I commented on your bottom. And actually, what came up for you was feeling objectified and disgusted. So there's always this longing trying to be expressed and this unintended pain. The more we can become practiced at recognizing all the unintended pain that we're creating all day, every day, the less we get hung up on that pain means something's wrong. Pain doesn't mean there's something wrong. It's just feelings, unmet needs being evoked. The good thing about unmet needs coming up, expressed as pain, is that we get to bring loving awareness to the unmet needs. We get to soothe pain with love, and that takes us deeper into connection. Now, coming back to your question.
The 9 different ways that we...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, let's go into the different ways that we meet pain with a no. So that first one, yeah, sorry, did you want to interrupt?
Well, yeah, well, I was just going to also highlight, which leads into this, great at segues on my little segue. As someone who had never had her pain recognized, who grew up in a society that, you know, dismissed, invalidated. I grew up as a good girl, so I sacrificed my needs to meet everyone else's. I thought that's how I got my needs met. I was loved because I was selfless, all these sorts of things. When I have been able to, and this is the beautiful thing that is about open heart communication, is that for people like myself who've never been heard, never been able to speak to my pain that I'm in, the way that it's structured is that I get to talk about my pain and recognize the goodness in them. Now, the one thing that has come out because of that, because I've stayed committed to this open heart space, that in seeing the goodness in them, always invalidating, well, not always, can't say always, but, you know, most of the time returning to that space, what has happened is the other person has come to me and said, I never knew that you felt like this.
Yeah.
And I'm going, how could you not know? How could you not know by my behavior? Like, and then I'm also like, okay, well, that makes total sense. Like, it makes total sense why they weren't able to, or they didn't change their behavior, because they didn't know the impact that it was having on me. And so the beautiful thing about your work and this work that I'm now going into is that it gives people who've never been able to speak about their pain a place to speak about their pain without blaming or,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. So we've just been speaking. So if we consider that there are two pathways, two drains that we're unblocking. The first pathway that we've just been talking about is being able to recognize the goodness, the longing that we were trying for in the action we took, and the unintended pain that we created for others. And so we can stay fiercely open and present with them so they get to express their pain and we get to repair. The second pathway, now that you've invited us to go into, is the pathway where we get to express our pain. Normally, we'll do that really unskillfully. Normally, I will just consider that because I feel hurt, you must be hurtful. Because I feel without choice, you're being controlling. Because I felt unappreciated, you never appreciate me. So all of us as human beings have this default mechanism of taking our inner experience, which is true, and then projecting it outwardly as if it's the truth about someone else. And we all do that so compulsively that we don't even see it. The truth is, I feel unappreciated. What I make it mean is you're unappreciative. As long as I as long as I speak about my upset as a projection onto you, it's going to evoke defensiveness in you. Always. Why? Because you never wanted to be unappreciative of me. That's not what you were concerned about. You were attempting to express some other thing. And I received it as feeling unappreciated. And both of those things are true. So if I go to the conversation with my ex-wife the next morning on the phone, hanging up on me is not okay, right? And I needed to be able to express, for me to feel like that relationship is loving and mutual, I needed to come back to her and express the upset that being hung up on caused me, right? Of course, I need to address that. Otherwise, I'm just going to secretly resent her forever, like as the hanger-upper. We're just not going to have fruitful conversation. It's not going to be a loving co-parenting relationship. And it's fine if people want unloving co-parenting relationships, but I won't ever stand for that. So I needed to be able to express my pain. The unskillful way for me to do that would have been to message her or call her directly saying, how dare you hang up on me? That's just not okay. Like, I won't tolerate being dismissed like that. How dare you? See how that would have been me labeling her behavior as bad or wrong. Most of us naturally do that approach. And how does it go? They get really defensive or withdrawn or fight back. Then we make that mean that suddenly they're some sort of narcissist, right? Because look at how they won't own their shitty behavior.
You did something wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, you've done something wrong. Clearly it was wrong. You won't accept responsibility for it. You're that kind of person who doesn't accept responsibility for all the wrong that you do. And then that just goes, we just charge down the pathway of pathologizing them. But let's get very clear. If I take that approach of saying, how dare you, I'm completely dismissing the experience that she was having. Completely dismissing in favor of my judgment of her behavior. Now, I don't condone being hung up on at all, ever. No thanks, never again. And she hung up on me because some experience was alive in her. If I want the behavior to change, I must recognize the experience that's alive that gave rise to the behavior.
Yes.
So when I call her the next morning, I go straight for that experience. And of course, I don't know it. I don't know what she was experiencing, but I can kind of make an educated heart guess at it because this is the woman I was with for 15 years and loved more than anyone on the planet. So I do have some insights into what she might have been experiencing. So I'm able to start the conversation with, I imagine you were left feeling, I don't know, maybe dismissed and frustrated in the conversation last night. See how I'm getting curious about an experience that gave rise to her hanging up? I'm still not saying I'm okay with being hung up on. I'm just saying I recognize it came from somewhere valid. So eventually I can get to the point where I can say, where I can start to recognize what she was longing for instead of that she was just being a selfish, hurtful bitch. Because me accusing her that way is just going to shut down the possibility of relationship between us. So where I could get to then was I could say, when you hung up on me, so in one hand, I'm going to hold my pain, and in the other hand, I'm going to hold her longing. This is what it sounds like. When you hung up on me, I was left feeling really dismissed and hurt and frustrated. And I imagine that you hanging up on me was your effort to have your sense of feeling unappreciated finally recognized by me after all this time. Nowhere there have I said I'm okay with being hung up on. I've said the pain of being hung up on for me and the longing that was trying to be expressed through hanging up on me. And so immediately I'm speaking to some validity in the experience she's having. I'm not saying I'm okay with being hung up on. I'm saying I recognize what hanging up on me was an expression of. Were you just really needing me to feel how incredibly hurt and frustrated and disappointed you were? Yes, she says. Of course I was. That makes sense to me. That makes sense to me that hanging up was like an immediate way to get your upset seen by the man that you want to be understood by. You know what she says next? It wasn't a very skillful way to go about it, was it? So, see, because I validated her longing, she gets to be recognized that she's not a bad person. And
Mm.
then the freedom for her to reflect on, was that a skillful way to go about getting my pain seen?
Yeah, you can talk about the behavior once you're both in this
Yeah.
space of no one's right or wrong. We've both had experiences. Now let's find a way to move forward where we can both have our needs met.
So I could say to her, I want you. I want you. I'm on your team with your pain getting recognized by me. I want that for you. I want that for our relationship. Anytime there's pain for you in our conversation, I want it recognized. It's just that hanging up on me is probably a shitty strategy for that because it doesn't really have me open to your pain. It has me feeling like I have to withdraw. And she's like, yeah, I can totally understand that. And she's like, how could I express my pain? And I'm like, why don't you practice saying to me, can I share some upset with you? She was
Mm.
like, really? Would you be open to that? And I'm like, yeah, I would like us to try that. And she's like, okay, cool. Ever since, ever since she's been able to say, hey, I'm upset about something.
Yes, and because you created that space of your pain is valid, I'm here for you. I'm not going to label you as bad. And she's like, yeah. And I can imagine that for your relationship, that's created a deeper sense of understanding. What else?
Trust.
Yes.
Trust because she knows that she can express her upset into my open heart without having to be a bit more kind of nasty or malicious or vindictive. She can actually just say, I've got some upset, and she knows that I'll tend to it.
And this is your ex-wife,
Yeah. I'm
right?
very fortunate. Yeah. I'm very fortunate. We've done a lot of work and she's been willing. She doesn't have this, she doesn't have this approach. She doesn't have any tools. I've got the tools, but she's demonstrated this incredible willingness.
Mm.
And so that brings us to the point where what if we're willing to recognize someone's pain and bring a loving yes to it, and still they don't want to be in relationship with us?
Mm.
And what if we're willing to speak about our pain in a way that honors the fact that they never wanted pain for us and they're still not wanting to have communication with us? Some of the time we will reach scenarios with people, and I've got one very present in my life right now about someone I care very deeply for, where they will not want communication. Now, we've got two options. The first option is to make them wrong for that.
Yes.
And the mind loves doing that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, here I am being all communicative. Here I am doing all this reflection on my pain and longing and their longing and pain. Go me. And they're not. So I'm a bit better than them. I'm a bit more right than they are, and they're a bit more wrong than I am. The mind loves that game. Option two is to recognize that them not wanting communication is an expression of an experience they're having. We don't have to agree with the way they're going about that to recognize the validity of the experience they're having. What might prevent someone from ever wanting communication with me again? They might be feeling completely unready. They might be feeling like communication with me might evoke feelings that they don't want to touch anymore.
Or
They
potentially
might,
they could be afraid of your reaction based
yes,
on past, not with you, but past reactions they've
yes,
experienced.
absolutely. They might be worried about past reactions that I or others have had, communicating about difficult things. They might simply want the safety of non-communication.
Mm.
You know, have you ever closed your front door at night time? Why? Because you wanted the night out and the warmth and sleep in. So while it's deeply painful for us to want communication and relationship with someone and to not be able to achieve it, let's tend to the pain of that in one hand.
Yes.
Let's be the person who brings a deep sense of attunement to our own pain by saying, of course I feel upset. This is a practice that I'm still doing every night
Mhm.
with that particular relationship where I've lost all contact and I love this human. Tend to my pain. Statements, validating statements like, Fish, you have every right to still be deeply sad and hurt and upset and disappointed. And in the other hand, hold what they are longing for in not having communication. Look at how they might be seeking the relative peace of no contact. Look at how they might be hoping for their pain to be recognized by withdrawing completely. Look at how they might simply not be ready. Look at how the feelings that being in contact with me might naturally put them in touch with and how difficult those feelings would absolutely be. Look at the uncertainty that communication might create for them compared to the certainty of no communication. Once again, I'm not condoning the action. I think cutting contact with someone is a very unskillful action. And yet I've been the recipient of it a number of times and I've done the same to others. And when I really look at why I've withdrawn communication from others, it's really been around my own safety, psychological
Mm.
safety. It's like the feeling of I'm not sure that communication between us can ever leave me feeling safe enough after what's happened.
Yes.
So tend to our pain. It's very real, the upset that their withdrawal can create for us or that their unwillingness, but also recognize that their unwillingness is an expression of some very, very real and rich experience that they're having. It's so human what's underneath that
It's
behavior.
and it's so incredibly courageous for you to be able to sit in that space of your own feelings and not be able to get anything back in return. I think that, that's what this kind of communication is all about. It's about stepping into that courage and willingness and out of the anger and grief and sadness and just expanding into that new emotion.
Yeah. And really what I'm striving to do and what you're striving to do and what everyone who's practicing this approach is striving to do is, like you're saying, expand our awareness wide enough so that I can hold my pain and their pain.
Yes.
Not hold it as in like have to do something with it.
Mm-hmm.
Hold it as in like strapping a ton of bricks to my back. Hold it as in just being lovingly aware of it. That person over there with this suffering, of course they're suffering. I mean, look at what's transpired. Of course they're suffering. And here I am also suffering. And
Yes.
look at the suffering in each of our hearts. And, that brings up extra grief. That's not easy to do. Of course, it's courageous. But also look at the longing in my heart for connection and look at the longing in their heart for relative safety. Those two things are really beautiful and human.
Mm-hmm.
So just expanding beyond this very self-centered view that we take.
Yes.
It's like, how dare you? I'm being good, you're being bad, screw you.
Yeah.
That's a very self-centered view that fails to expand into both human beings having very real experiences, even as we are really suffering from what's happened. Being willing to bring awareness to our pain and their pain and the humanness of both of us.
Yes. Yes. So I'm just planning an 8-month program talking about how to get out of the survival thinking, which is the lower vibration for those who are spiritual, lower vibration emotions of fear, shame, guilt, anger, those sorts, sadness, those sorts of things, up into the higher, more spiritual emotions of courage, willingness, acceptance, reason, love, enlightenment. And so I really would love you to speak about how, as a society and as a collective, we are programmed and trained in ways to respond to conflict and to keep us in those um lower frequency emotions,
Yeah.
contracting, right?
Yeah.
Expansion, contraction.
Yeah. Great. Great. So I love that you speak to kind of the higher vibrations of love and acceptance, because really the model that I've been teaching you, which is those four truths: my longing, your unintended pain, your longing, my unintended pain. As soon as we bring awareness to those four truths that normally we can't even see because they're disguised by our judgment, as soon as we bring loving awareness to all four truths, we are in the state of acceptance,
Mm-hmm.
not accepting what's happened, accepting where it came from, not condoning the behavior, recognizing the humanness underneath the behavior. Deep loving acceptance towards ourselves and towards the other being.
Yes.
So that vibration of acceptance it's actually pretty neutral. Like it doesn't sell newspapers. If we took
No.
if we took that four truths approach and applied it to any of the atrocities on the planet,
Mm.
it wouldn't create outrage. It would simply put a this person and a that person. And oh my gosh, is it any wonder they're behaving so poorly? Because look at the experiences they're having.
Right.
Well, it's very benign. It's a very
Mm.
benign truth. That's why it doesn't go viral when I post about it. Whereas if I post about narcissism, it would go viral because
Yes.
we love the charge of right and wrong. It's like junk food, right?
Yes.
So let's look at what prevents us from operating in a state of acceptance and moving towards loving awareness. If I go back to the story with my ex-wife and I've just been hung up on, and I know that the work I need to do in this moment, because I've done this work for 15 years, I know I have to meet her pain with a yes, but I don't want to. I don't want to meet her pain with a yes. Like I really, literally don't want to. I have to really summon up the courage to. What does my mind want to do instead? Here's how we've been trained to respond to pain. Number one, I want to dismiss her pain. It's very easy for me to dismiss her pain. I want to say to her, I wasn't I wasn't not listening to you. I don't not appreciate you. You've got it wrong. How dare you accuse me of being unappreciative of you, of not listening? How dare I can think of 1,000 times in the last few years that I've listened to you deeply, right? So I just want to dismiss her pain in favor of my longing, which is to have a great relationship with her. So I just want to talk about all the ways that I've been appreciative of her, and that will naturally leave her feeling dismissed. Naturally. So that's the first thing my mind really wants to do is just say, no, you shouldn't have that pain. That's not real. That's not what I was doing. Number two, I want to minimize it. I want to just shrink it. I'll accept that it's true, but I want to shrink it. I'll say something like, this is a bit of an overreaction, isn't it? Like, yeah, okay, you're feeling a bit dismissed, but did you need to hang up on me? Like, that was a bit radical. So I actually want to say the expression of pain is too big for what it should be. I
What
want to,
I think it should be.
yes, what I think it should be. So I
Yeah.
want to shrink it. I'm always thinking about a dear couple who live close to me that I did some work with. And the great breakthrough for their relationship was when he recognized and he shared with me, he said, oh gosh, I've just realized something, Fish. And I said, what was it? He said, oh, I've got this habitual response when my wife expresses her upset to me. He says, my natural default response is, don't you think you're being a bit ridiculous? And I'm like, oh, how does that go for you? And he says, I generally have to sleep in the other room whenever I say that because she just gets so angry and hurt and withdraws from me. That's him trying to actually say, I don't think your pain should be as big as it is. So we unconsciously already want to shrink their pain because we never wanted it in the first place. So, of course, it occurs to us that their pain is too big because I was never trying to cause my ex-wife upset. I was trying to support her. So I'm like, your pain's too big. Dial it down a notch. Second one, it's like minimizing. Third way we love to respond to pain is by comparing it. So she hangs up on me and I want to ring her directly and say, hey, you want to talk about who doesn't listen to who? I want to bring your attention to all these situations in the past where you've actually never understood me. That's much more significant than your feelings of being misunderstood.
Mm.
Or in terms of Israel Palestine, Israelis are like, oh, our pain's much more significant than yours. And Palestine's like, how dare you look at the pain that we've encountered over how many years compared to your pain?
Mm.
Or even down to when my mum, when I was 10 and I didn't want to finish my potatoes at dinner,
Mm.
and she would say, think of the starving kids in Africa.
Or what you might find is, for example, people might go overseas and say, oh, well, when you see how other people are living, you think, oh, I haven't got it that bad,
You
right? So
shouldn't be so upset about something, but
yeah,
it's a first world problem.
other
Exactly.
people have it
Yeah.
worse than me, so what do I have to complain about?
Yeah, exactly. So we've got this unconscious mechanism that says, does our pain measure up? Does it measure up against yours and mine? Does it measure up against other people's pain in the world? So this is another way in which we invalidate ourselves by comparing pain and deciding whose pain matters most, or does my pain measure up or not? So at the moment, we've got dismiss, minimize, and compare. Fourthly, by the way, none of these are helpful because none of them bring loving awareness to pain, and healing only happens when we bring loving awareness to pain. Number four, there's more bad news. We rationalize.
Mm.
Like we think we need a team of lawyers to come up with all the data to strengthen our argument to suggest our pain is legitimate. It's real because that person agrees with me, or it brought about this physical injury, or it's been happening for this many days, or XYZ. So we just want to rack up the data to make our emotions rationally verifiable. But as you know, as an emotion coach, emotions are not rationally verifiable. Like the rational world and the emotional world are different worlds. They coexist, but they're different worlds. So, what that looks like in my conversation with my ex wife is I'm tempted to ring her and say, how the hell did you feel so upset? Like, explain to me rationally, you know,
Logically.
logically, how on earth you could be so upset because I was not being upsetting. Like, help me understand the data I'm missing. That's not bringing loving awareness to her pain. That's actually saying, I'm not sure you've got the right to have those feelings until you explain it very rationally to me. And no human being on the planet ultimately will be able to explain in data terms why certain feelings are alive in them. Like
Totally.
mismatch, rational and emotional. Conflict is emotional. And for as long as we want to explain it rationally, we're screwed because
Yes.
there's the whole emotional component of conflict.
Mm,
Regardless of whether we feel comfortable in talking about emotions, they're there.
mm.
I used to work in the corporate market and run emotional awareness programs, and some senior leaders in some major multinational corporations that I won't name would leave the room because they thought emotions weren't part of resolving conflict in the workplace.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a part of the older, I
Yeah,
want to say paradigm, but I also want to say generation because they were brought up in survival. It was literally, survive or die. So they're programmed to not focus on emotions because you won't live if you focus on emotions. So now we're moving into this time where emotions are becoming more spoken about, available. We can access more of them because we don't have to focus on survival, and that's where we're getting this butting heads of emotional and logical.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And relationships are emotional.
Mm-hmm.
Disconnection in relationship evokes emotions, and repair requires emotional awareness.
Mm.
Um, and yet we live in a very hyper rational world where emotions, even the term feelings aren't facts,
Oh, I
and
was
tends
so
to dismiss
triggering.
feelings in
Yeah.
favor of facts. But if we go in thinking that we resolve conflict by looking at the facts, we will be screwed. All of your friends out there who are listening, who are either the rational person in the relationship or have a rational partner, you will notice that any conversation about data does not repair. It does not repair. It might be fascinating to engage in about who remembers what rightly, but it won't repair because repair happens when the pain and the longing in each human heart is recognized. So dismiss, minimize, compare, rationalize. Fifth, we have fix.
Mm.
Love. As soon as pain arises, we think we have to do something about it. So as soon as my ex-wife hangs up on me and I'm like, oh, she's upset, I feel like we have to solve it. We have to do something about it, right? Either you have to do something about it because screw you for hanging up on me, or I have to do something about it. And while that's very natural for us to want to move towards like, how do we avoid this in the future? Trying to fix pain is not the same as bringing loving awareness to the pain. It's actually trying to get out of it
Yes.
rather than tend to it.
And it's such a beautiful intention, though, trying to help someone
Yeah,
get out of it. But by
well,
doing that, we're saying you shouldn't feel like this.
shouldn't feel
It's
this
not
way.
okay for you to
No,
feel like this.
something's wrong and we need to fix it. That's
Yeah.
right. So if I use the analogy of my daughter falling off the trampoline when she's 2 years of age,
Mm,
going to fix it would sound like me going, oh, well, next time we've got to put mattresses around it, or you have to have a jumping height limit, or you can only jump when I'm out here with you.
mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, she's on the floor with cuts on her knees, crying.
Yes.
And here I am trying to work out what to do about it instead of wrapping her in my loving arms and saying, that must really hurt, darling.
And
And
we
I'm right
want
here.
And we wonder why we have a society full of people with mental health problems when we've never fully, well, a lot of us, most of us, all of my clients have never fully been, had our pain wrapped in loving awareness. And so we're just sitting with all of this buried pain.
And
Yeah,
it's expressing itself in
unskillful ways.
in yeah, in thoughts that are really damaging to us
Yes.
and in emotional expression of physical ailments. Absolutely.
Mm,
And the sixth, unskillful and natural, they're all very natural ways that we react to pain, is that we want to decide whose fault it is, which we spoke to earlier. So as soon as my ex-wife hangs up on me, I'm like, am I the bad person or is she the bad person? Am I the villain or is she the villain? And the mind is obsessed with that game. But while I'm trying to work out whose fault it is, I'm not bringing loving awareness to the pain that's there. So all of those methods, dismissing, minimizing, comparing, rationalizing, fixing, and finding fault, all of those, though well-intentioned, they're all moving towards pain is bad and we want something else. So they're well-intentioned, but they are the absence of attunement, the
mm.
absence of loving awareness. And healing can only happen when loving awareness is brought to pain. So that's a list of the ways that we normally meet someone's pain with a no. We also do the same to our own pain. So as soon as I start to feel some upset, I want to dismiss it. I want to minimize it. I want to compare it. I want to rationalize it. I want to fix it, or I want to decide, is it my fault or someone else's? Instead of this practice that you've become so skilled at, look at what I'm feeling. Look at the sorrow that's alive in me and look at the doubt and the uncertainty. Look at how there's a tinge of guilt. And I actually have every right to be feeling those things. And I'm right here. And I'm just going to let those feelings be here and be alive in me because it turns out they are. They just are. I didn't want them,
Mm,
but here they are. So getting really attuned to the emotional reality of the moment is the absolute essence of being able to lead repair in the world. Because if I can't attune to my own experience, I'm just going to be pathologizing or blaming someone else and deepening the rupture between us because they have to defend against my pathologies. Like if we come back to the term narcissism or toxic people, let's use toxic. Anytime I label someone as toxic, I'm deepening the rift between us
mm-hmm,
actively.
mm-hmm.
Why? Because labeling them toxic has just dismissed the very, very real and rich and nuanced human experience that they were having underneath what they said or did. So I completely dehumanize them by dismissing the humanness in them. Instead, a more conscious approach to working with what we might call toxic behavior is to say, what you just said or did in an effort to feel a certain way left me feeling a kind of unsafety or uncertainty or hurt that I'm not prepared to continue with. So I want you to go about trying to have those needs met that you were trying to meet in a different way so that I get to experience the kind of safety I long for in this relationship. How you went about it was unskillful. You're not a bad person. The behavior created an upset for me that you would have never wanted for me. Maybe you were trying to get your pain seen. Maybe you were trying to create some safety by taking an act that actually left me feeling really hurt or rejected or fearful or doubtful. Let's see if we can find a way for you to get those needs met in a way that creates more of what I want and much less of this pain that I won't tolerate anymore. That's a more skillful approach to talking about toxic behavior because it
Yeah.
leaves the other person feeling humanized. And guess what? They're a human. Underneath all those labels that we've learned is a human having an experience. And
Yes.
here we are, we just prefer to label them than recognize their humanness.
Mm.
We're fine doing that in that direction, but as soon as someone labels us, how do we feel? We feel completely dehumanized. We are outraged that they're not willing to recognize the experience that we're having. We feel completely cast out, shut down, made wrong. We
Mm.
love labeling others and we hate being labeled. There's an inconsistency there that points to the fact that the ego is just, we love our self-centered view. We
Yes.
love our self-centered view. We make love to the idea that we're the victim and other people are villains. It's like heroin in the veins to us.
Mm.
I'm right and you're wrong. It's the biggest
Yeah.
addiction on the planet, I reckon. I'm right and you're wrong.
Yeah. And we were talking about last week how, this emotional maturing, right? So we've been in this world that's not emotional, it's logical. So now we have the collective, which is learning how to deal with their emotions. And I don't want to label it, but I want to say the levels of growth are kind of that egoic young stage of thinking that everything is because of me, about me, and we're separate from the other person. And then as we gain more experiences in life and begin to realize ourselves and mature, we step into a space where we can realize that we're one and the same, and we're both having very real experiences. Yeah.
And for me, the way that we transition into that mature or expanded view, which actually puts us in touch with reality instead of just the view that the ego gives us. 4 questions that navigate that transition, that bring us back into connection with reality and humanness. Question 1, what was I really longing for behind what I did? Question 2, what's the unintended upset that my actions may have evoked in them? Question 3, what was the pain that their actions evoked in me? Question 4, what might their tender heart have actually been longing for, as distinct from the suffering that their actions brought me? Once we touch those 4 truths, and they're not easy to find, are they, Lauren? I've asked you over and over and over again, maybe 10 times, maybe 50, maybe 100, what are the 4 truths? And they are not naturally in our view until we have the courage to go looking. Because me feeling into the yearning in my ex-wife's heart behind hanging up on me, to start with, it feels like I'm making her behavior okay. So I don't want to do that. I just want to believe that she's being nasty. But actually, I see that she wanted her pain recognized. And I don't want to feel into her pain because that feels like I'm making myself the villain. But actually, I can start to realize that I did create some unintended pain for her. It's not at all what I wanted. And it was definitely what was evoked in her. So those four truths are hidden from our view. And that's why I call this work conscious communication, because we are bringing into our awareness that which naturally lies out of our awareness. And it takes remarkable courage. And it's incredible for me to get your messages that, you send me these beautiful messages about the challenges of this work, but also now these breakthroughs in relationships that are significant to you. And I'm just like, I bow to you because I know each of those moments, it took extraordinary courage to take this approach because you actually had every right to just go, I'm surrounded by fuckheads. You know, I'm surrounded by people who are completely unwilling and completely unaware. And I'm sick of being the one to lead. And
Mm.
why can't they recognize the pain I'm in? And why can't they see my goodness? And I'm always prepared to do this work and no one else would join me in it. You have every right to go back into the I'm right and wrong model. But no, you're actually like, you know what? I'm going to bring loving awareness to me and them. And things are starting to transform. And it's incredibly courageous.
Literally, things are starting to transform in how people who I was always in conflict with before, because I assumed that because they were hurting me, they meant
They were
to
being hurt.
hurt me. Yeah, they like, how could you not see that what you're saying is not hurting me? Like, how could you think that? So obviously,
How can you deny the fact that you're a hurtful person? Yeah.
yes, of course. I felt so, and so my way of dealing with it was just completely pushing away and shutting down and just having minimal contact and minimal, oh, oh,
Yeah. I mean, that's what's being peddled in the world of pathologizing. It's like someone's irritated you, that's their shit, cut them out.
yeah.
Someone won't accept responsibility for the hurt they've caused you, they're toxic, cut them out. That's what's being peddled. We really are being sold by a particular arm of the pop psychology realm. We are being sold disempowerment because we've got no tools. Cutting someone out of your life doesn't give you the tools for repair. It just deepens the rupture. So but we're being sold disempowerment. We're being sold staying wedded to our pain because we just keep this narrative that everyone's a pain causer. We're not even bringing loving awareness to our pain. We're just over there in labeling them as a pain causer. And we're stuck in our righteousness where we're like, I'm the good person here and I'm just surrounded by bad people. So we're kept stuck in this prison of righteousness, disempowerment, and pain.
Mm.
No opportunity to repair. And you know yourself because you're sharing these stories with me about your own personal life privately with me about how people are showing up differently now. People that you couldn't count on in
Mm-hmm.
terms of their loving presence are now offering you their loving presence.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because it turns out human beings are not fixed.
We're wired for connection. We want to connect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what you're doing is you're creating the safety between you and other people for them to somehow start to become attuned to you because they don't have to be the villain in your story.
So much. Hey, and something else I just wanted to share. I'm not sure if I've shared this with you, but I wanted to share with everyone. When we're stuck in this victim villain story and we're holding on to this pain and we're feeling this anger as a way to protect ourselves, to keep ourselves safe, to keep these boundaries in place, that feeling and emotion is only affecting you. So the
Yeah.
benefit of this work is stepping into courage, willingness, and acceptance, reason, love, because you get to reap the benefits of those feelings. And then because you've changed and you now embody this, you
Yeah.
can then spread that to other people around you, and you don't actually need them to change and show up. Now, I'm talking like, if you persist and continue and you're committed, it's not something that happens like that.
But overnight, not at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
Night, it just feels uncomfortable, doesn't it? Just like all the
Yes.
assignments I set you, you're like, "Ugh." But actually, you've stayed committed to the practice, and now you get to be the beneficiary, even if no one opens the way you want them to. There'll be a point in my 9-week group coaching program generally where I say to people, how are you feeling about this work? And people kind of go, and people tend to touch their throats and their chest a bit when they answer this question. And they kind of go, I just feel quite spacious. It's like the things that used to really upset me just kind of don't upset me anymore. Not because I've switched off to them, just because there's more space. I've
Mm,
started to see that people didn't mean all the wounds that I've collected. Like it was just unskillful of them, shitty actions, but they actually never would have wanted my pain. I've also
mm,
started to see all the pain that I've created for other people and how I would never have wanted that. And there's just more space. And I just feel more steady and less kind of like at the mercy of all the pain in the world. So, that's what's in it for us. Even if we can't repair the communication, can't repair the relationships that matter most to us, we will find more an inner sense of peace because we are actually standing in acceptance. It's like, look at humanness everywhere in
yeah.
us and in all beings.
And I love that you say that the great thing about this work is that you actually don't need the other person's willingness to benefit from it, which
No,
it's so true.
yeah. When we're met by their willingness, it's fantastic.
Mm,
Of course, we want that. But when we're not, we can still inhabit a place of loving understanding. And we don't have to be anywhere near someone's unwillingness. Like, I'm not saying, hey, you should just invest in a relationship that someone else doesn't invest in. Go and do that for 30 years because you should. No way. Like, you might get to a point where you're like, you know what? I've given everything to this, and
mm,
now I need to be away from it. But you'll still be able to hold a very loving awareness around that person and think, look, their unwillingness, once again, it's an expression of exactly what they're experiencing.
mm,
There's a pain in them that's overwhelming that they're not ready to touch. There's an unsafety that they've experienced with me that they don't want to risk. There's such humanness underneath that unwillingness. And I'm going to move towards someone that's more willing.
yes. And what you're touching on there is kind of that discernment around how much am I willing to, uh, can you help me fill in the word? Because it's not,
All right.
yeah, yeah.
Accept, be with.
Yeah, well, how much am I willing to, yeah, oh, at what distance do I
Yeah.
need for safety?
Yeah. At what distance from this unskillful behavior in them that's just an expression of their longing and pain when it all boils down? How far away from their fairly consistently unskillful behavior do I need to be so that I know that I'm loving myself?
Mm,
None of that involves me labeling or pathologizing them. And none of it involves me being up close to behavior that creates pain for me. At what distance is a fantastic question because it recognizes that we have agency
yes.
over how close or how far away we are from things that consistently bring us fear, doubt, uncertainty, sorrow, confusion. At what distance? And we kind of forget that we've got a choice there. Sometimes we stay right up close in relationships, desperately trying to make someone else do different things and forget the fact that we're choosing to be proximal to that behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not suggesting it's easy, it's an easy question to ask us because some of us have children with partners and the behavior of the partners creates incredible pain for us. For example,
Mm,
physical or emotional abuse. So, of course, that's a difficult question to wrestle with. But ultimately, we have a choice about how near or how far. It's like I have a choice about how close or far away from a golf course I park my car. knowing that the golf course will involve stray golf balls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like I experienced that firsthand, where when I started doing the work, I thought that I had to always be available and open and supportive and validating, otherwise it wouldn't work. And so unintentionally, what I was doing was not checking in with myself around my capacity to show up. And then the learning from that came in going, I want to have this conversation with you. However, at the moment, I don't have the capacity. Can we make a time? Because this is how I want to show up for you. And the power in giving myself that choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful kind of thing to finish on, perhaps for us, is that, it's a very beautiful question that once again comes back to agency.
Mm.
What's my capacity right now to lead the repair? If I'm going to lead rather than expect someone else to do it for me, what's my capacity? Am I grounded and open and feeling like I've validated myself enough to not be so demanding of their validation? Or
Mm.
do I need to go and tend to my own emotions and honor my own longing and find some space and find some peace in myself so that later I can come back with greater capacity? That's a beautiful question. The other half of that question is, what do I think their capacity is right now? So if I'm 5 minutes away from going to a party with my partner, and I want to use those 5 minutes in the car just as we arrive to a dinner party to start a resolution conversation, what's her capacity right now? Is this the right time and place, or is she immediately going to feel like there's not the space or the focus required? So considering what's their capacity, and the more upset someone is, the less capacity they will have to meet us in a repair conversation. So sometimes the most loving thing to do is say, we don't have capacity right now, and I want us to be full capacity. So let's
Mm.
go and take some time to sort of revitalize, so that when we approach this, because it means so much to me, we can approach it with greater capacity that you and I both deserve. So we often, sometimes some of us get so urgent for repair that we forget to consider what's their capacity.
Yeah.
If they're black and blue in the face and screaming at us and tears streaming down their face, how's any conversation going to go? Probably likely not so great, because they're completely feeling shut down and threatened and hurt right now. So what could I do to build capacity in them and in me? Space, or not conversation, a loving touch, cup of tea. Like, how could I build capacity for us right now?
Or do
Yeah.
we need a safe interaction that isn't around the conflict so we
Yeah.
can return to connection? Yeah. And it's like the saying that you can't solve a problem in the same energy that it was created. You can't
Yeah. Yeah.
resolve conflicts in the same emotion that it was created. So you need to be able to have the tools to be able to step out of that emotion, come back to grounded
Yeah.
space to be able to approach it in a way that's going to lead you towards that sense of deeper connection.
Yeah. I had that very thing recently with someone. There was such upset between us momentarily. And because I'm me, I just like, let's resolve it right now.
I've got the tools, let's go.
Yeah. But as soon as I started to offer what I thought their upset might have been, because that's what I train people in. It's like, I'm just going to name their upset so they feel attuned to. But naming their upset left them feeling more upset and overwhelmed. And they were just like, I can't even, let's just not, I can't even, don't stop. And I suddenly realized that my urgency was the problem. And and then I thought to myself, what can I do to increase our capacity right now? And my answer was not resolve it. not strive to resolve it, was the very thing that would create some openness between us. So I said to this person, I'm so sorry, I can see how urgent I'm becoming. Let's take some time without discussing this, without needing to discuss this. And they went, yes, that's what I need.
Yes.
Time to discuss this. So I was actually consciously growing capacity by not resolving things.
Mm.
Fun.
This really is conscious work, right? It's just about stepping back and expanding our awareness around the whole situation of the conflict, capacity, discernment, all those sorts of things.
Yeah. And a final kind of key question that I'll leave us with, really, a good overarching question is, how might I evoke open-heartedness?
Mm.
Because a lot of the ways that we will naturally communicate in the midst of conflict will evoke closed-heartedness in them.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I accuse you or label you or dismiss your experience, I will evoke your closed-heartedness.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, how do I evoke open-heartedness? What is it that I can acknowledge about their experience that immediately will leave them feeling safer, wrapped in my loving awareness? Yeah.
Mm.
So in a nutshell, how do I evoke an open-heartedness between us, which is not naturally present, by the way. Closed-heartedness is what's naturally present in conflict.
Of course, it's all around us.
Mm.
Thank you so much. Just want to acknowledge, appreciate, give so much thanks to how much effort, courage, energy this whole thing takes for you to be leading the way, because that's exactly what you're doing. You're not just sitting there going, this is what you should be doing. You're going, here's what I'm doing and here's how I'm struggling. And this is what I'm leading towards. You're really just leading the way in this expansion of all of the people that you touch, and just want to really recognize you for that and share how appreciated I am.
Thanks, Lauren. That lands beautifully. And you know better than anyone, because in my facilitated training program, I share a lot of personal stories. You know the fact that my life consists of a lot of people who've been really hurt by me. And it's those hurts and upsets and the hurts that I've sustained at the hands of other people that have really illuminated this process. So I guess I always just keep a little prayer in my heart for the people I've hurt most deeply, that one day, if they're listening to this, that they might feel just a hint of being acknowledged for the incredible upset that they've had to sit with by relating to me.
Mm,
And that maybe some good has come of it, in that other people's relationships might be supported and liberated through what I've come to see in the pain that I've caused. Yeah, but thank you.
absolutely. Thank you so much for being here.